Okay, 4 weeks in to Leviticus as we're on our fall tour through the most unpopular books of the Bible. Believe it or not, but the gospel has been beaming out of this book, right? Like out of the gate, God in his grace is not stiff-arming people and he's not turning his back on rebels, but he's making a way for unholy people to approach him, the Holy One. And we saw that week 1 and 2 in the sacrificial system, God's way, his answer to deal with the severity of sin and restore us relationally to him and repair the damages of its effects. It is astounding to think about a God who forgives, right? Through atonement. And we need to keep that in the forefront of our mind, that Leviticus is not this encyclopedia of useless ancient rituals. It's not a legalistic code for dry mechanical religion. It is astonishing mercy. Week 3 last week, we saw the priests, these set-apart spiritual leaders that would be go-betweens between the people and God, right? Like the priests, the point of this is about access to God, about closeness to God, that they could approach him on behalf of the people and thus minister his holy presence back to them. And in both sections, we see Jesus is the fulfillment, right? The true and better sacrifice and the true and better high priest. Every part of Leviticus is looking forward to the coming of Christ, which is important to remember as we come to today, Leviticus 11 through 15, what many people have called the most unattractive chapters in the whole Bible. We'll be covering normal things like food laws, childbirth, skin diseases, and yes, bodily discharges. So if this is your first time here, welcome to the well. We like to go through all of Scripture, not just the parts we pick and choose, because we believe it's all God-inspired, all his word, and thus all beneficial and profitable truth, which again is important to keep in mind because there are some strange categories today, and you are going to be tempted to go, this is menial, this is irrelevant. You're going to wonder what in the world is happening in this chapter. Yes, much of today is going to be unattractive, at least on the surface. But listen, when you dig, you get diamonds. When you seek the Lord, you find him, and we're going to find him today. So when it feels like you're reading something from a foreign country from thousands of years ago, just remember, we are, okay? It is. It's a foreign context, and we need to seek to enter that foreign context to humbly learn and understand it, rather than just to import our modern eyes with kind of a condescending lens towards it like many people do. No, it's enter into this, because remember, week 1, the background of the painting analogy of Leviticus, that's this, and we want to see the scriptural strokes throughout this book, not just to see it, but to see beyond it to what it's pointing to in the coming of Christ. There is deeper meaning that the details are going to drive us to today, and we're going to see it. So, as we get going, let me ask, any clean freaks out there? Come on, it's a safe place. It's okay to not be okay. Thank you, sisters, right there. Yeah, if you're a clean freak, think about the moment that you were in your life the most dirty, the most nasty, the most unclean, I just need a shower. Can you think of that moment right now? Maybe it's like it's a traumatic experience for you and it's triggering you and you just need a deep breaths for a little bit. That's fine, I get it. For me, one of my top 3 was a few weeks ago, okay? We got home from a long day of hiking. We got in the house and immediately realized the toilets wouldn't flush and water was coming up through the shower. And so I went outside of the main sewer line. I opened it up and sure enough, things came spilling out. So I did what other wise and experienced handy homeowners do. I went to YouTube. And to be fair, I actually tried a lot of ridiculous things first before I went to YouTube. But then eventually I went to YouTube because I didn't want to pay hundreds of dollars for a plumber. And I realized I needed to go to Home Depot. So I did. I went to Home Depot. And after a very thorough explanation from a really kind but also really terrifying employee who told me all the ways I could maim and dismember myself using this equipment, I finally got the equipment. I rented an auger and made a beeline for home. And I got to work. Now, at this point, I was already a little gross, but the grossness got progressively grosser. Because as you're using this machine, if you've ever done it, like as it coils out and goes down and then coils back, it is spinning. And as it's spinning, it sprays the stuff everywhere, right? It's kind of like a splash pad, okay? Now, normally you would like only spend a few minutes doing this. Boom, got the clog out, you're out of there, you're done. Mess would be minimal, but I had to do it over and over and over. I could not break through the clog. I spent hours spraying myself with this unsanitary stuff, okay? And you go, well, weren't you wearing gloves and clothes? Yes, I was wearing gloves and clothes, but listen, there's other areas that it gets that you don't have anything covering, right? If you know what I'm talking, like some of you, like you've dealt with septic stuff or you RV, black, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Like the grime gets everywhere. There's one detail I actually forgot to mention in all this. It was all during a severe thunderstorm. Like actually, like my phone's going off, all right? High wind, lightning, pouring rain. I got a picture to prove it. There you go, okay? So it's pouring down rain. There I am, getting after it. I had to do it. I couldn't wait till this passed. Like my family needs to shower. We need to cook a meal. We need to drink water, normal things like that. Until the blockage was removed, we couldn't go on with normal life. And so after 4 hours, and after a really, really good friend named Daryl came to save the day, like he always does, we broke through and we could resume normal life. And I remember, okay, after it was all done, I remember slopping my way inside and I just had one thought, one thing I wanted more than anything else. And it wasn't food, even though I was super hungry, and it wasn't using the restroom, even though that was urgent, yes. This thought was so clear. I just want to be clean, okay? I just remember, I just want to be clean. That's what I felt. Leviticus 11 through 15 is going to hit the same reality today. So as we go to Leviticus 11, we left off last week, the priests giving one of their duties was to determine what was clean and unclean, to distinguish this for the people. And so the 5 chapters we get today is the priests doing that. They're instructions for a variety of areas of life. And I just want to point out, as we do, like it's not so weird because listen, we do the same in today's day and age. In food, we have regulations and laws and freezer temps and restaurant codes and certain ways to store and handle and prepare things, right? And the same as we get into things about the body, like how we handle disease and contagion and sterilization in hospitals and all those things. Like we have lines where we draw things too. They might be different than what we're going to see today, but the concept is not. It's not that crazy because what's underneath it all, what's really simple about this is just we're defining what is orderly in the world, what belongs, what fits and is appropriate. Same reason you don't track muddy shoes into your house, because mud doesn't belong in there. So here we go, chapter 11. Let's start, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Speak to the people, these are the living things that you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth." God says, here's what's on the menu, and here's what is off limits. And we get 4 categories of animals. Number 1, land animals. Green light, anything that has split hooves and chews the cud. So sheep, cattle, goats, deer, etc. Red light, off limits, anything that doesn't meet those 2 conditions. So, he gives in some examples. Camel, rock badger, sorry guys, right? That's off limits. Hare, and here's the real collective sigh moment, a pig, right? Yeah, that was a tough one. Second category, marine animals. We got green light, anything with fins and scales, what zoologists call true fish. Red light, anything without fish or fins and scales, so shellfish, squid, octopus, etc. Category 3, birds. We just get the off-limits ones, okay? A long, long list. And virtually all of them are predators, and they're like carrion eaters. And so you got to think about there's contact with blood and death. Number 4, insects. They're all red light. They're all off-limits, except, and I know you're thrilled about this, locusts, grasshoppers, and crickets. Woo, right? That was a close one. John the Baptist is happy. Now, not only are those off limits to eat, they're off limits, it goes on in the chapter to say, to even touch the carcass of. They were unclean. And so we get this category in the Bible of clean versus unclean. But it's not a category of good versus bad or good versus evil, like camels aren't evil, okay? This is about breaking God's moral law. It's not about breaking God's moral law. It's about his ceremonial law. It's about ritual purity, about what's conducive to a relationship with a holy God, what fits and what doesn't. And when things come in contact with symptoms that are of living in a natural, sinful, fallen world, then it's going to be unclean. So in the case of food, what is clean just means this is edible, and what's unclean means this is non-edible. Okay, well, I was reading this week, Tyler, what's the line between clean and unclean? It really doesn't make sense. What's the dividing line? Well, some people have come up with some answers. Number one, it's hygiene. God was protecting them from what would have been harmful. And while this works on some of the animals, it doesn't work across the board. Number two, ascetic. Maybe God was just teaching them self-discipline, right? He's restraining them from self-indulgence and gluttony, but that also doesn't explain things. And that list doesn't keep you from self-indulgence and gluttony. Okay, well, others have gone the allegorical route, and they make a symbol out of everything. They say stuff like, well, to chew the cud means to like meditate on truth, right? And having scales symbolizes like this courageous, steadfast type character, right? And I get it, it's easy to go that way, and it sounds fanciful and fun, but like it's not consistent. That's not good interpretation. Like it's not because a rabbit is a scaredy cat animal, and so we shouldn't be like rabbits. Like that's not it, right? Or wallow in the mire of sin like pigs. That can't be the reason. Well, number four, they say, well, this is just a sign of these species are cursed, right? God doesn't like these animals. That doesn't work, right? He made everything in the garden and declared that it was good. Not only that, these laws are actually protecting these species. Like you can't even touch their carcasses, which means you can't use them for other things, right? Like clothing or utensils or instruments. And so there's no reason for economical gain to kill something. This is actually God stepping in with concern to ensure that these species have an environment to thrive and multiply. Okay, well, maybe it's pagan worship. Like these animals were involved in surrounding nations' idol worship, like pigs were with Egyptians and Canaanites. Okay, that works on that one, but not across the board. I think the best answer is a more recent development of what's normal versus the anomaly, okay? What's normal for its class and kind is clean, and what's an anomaly for its class and kind is unclean. And the symbol here is of holiness, because to be holy is to be whole, is to have order. And so these lines then for the Israelites would be like signposts inspiring their purity and their pursuit of God. That's the best answer, but there's, breakdowns in all of them. There's no clear reason that fits across the board. So then you go, why does God care? Anyone else asked that this weekend? Why? This is weird. This is confusing. Like, is he just a fun hater? I don't want people to enjoy lobster until Jesus comes. Like, is it fun for him? So listen, as Christians today, we understand, we're going to get into this later, these food laws no longer apply to us, okay? So you can praise God while you enjoy your bacon today, okay? Yeah, amen. There's the first amen. This isn't a menu for us, but why was it a menu for them then? And there is an element of, yes, the Creator gets to decide what we do with his creatures. Like, part of it is the fact that, yeah, he's the authority. And so these areas that seem weird and confusing and arbitrary, like, are we going to submit to him or are we going to do our own thing? Part of it is that. But I think it's more than just because God said so. Look at Leviticus 11, 44 through 47. I think there's a deeper answer. For I am the Lord your God. First time in Leviticus we see that. Consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourself. Verse 45, for I'm the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God, and you shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. Verse 47, these laws are to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean. So the first answer goes back to God. He's holy. He's set apart. He's untouched, unstained, untainted by sin and anything that is associated with it, and therefore we must be too. But the second reason is not just that he's holy, is what? That he saved you. He saved them. He brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Remember what comes first? Like, this is gratitude for God's grace, right? Grace before law. Mercy comes before holiness. It's his saving love that then drives us to live a changed life for him. This is not about obligation for Israel. It's about a response. That his amazing grace would motivate them to live differently. And in living differently, it would ensure that they would be, did you see the word in verse 47? Distinct. Badal in the Hebrew, to be separate. The same exact word in Genesis 1 when God separated the light from the darkness, the oceans from the sky, and the day from the night. Same word in Leviticus 20:26, you shall be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have separated you, had made you distinct from the surrounding peoples that you should be mine. In other words, you can't just go along with the current of the culture around you. You can't be indistinguishable from the world. God's people must be recognizably different. Which, of course, that's what kind of the whole book of Leviticus is about, right? From the offerings to the priests to what we're seeing today to what we will see in ethical laws about loving their neighbor and celebrating feasts and on and on. But it is also not just those other realms. The point of today, it's in this realm, the ritual realm. I think that's a part of what we need to see from this passage is that holiness extends to every facet of our life. It's not just hidden to the prayer closet. It's not just contained to Sunday worship. It touches the normal, the mundane, the everyday things of life, like eating. And like chapter 12 and chapter 15, like our bodies. So chapter 12, let's go to the second category, our body. Chapter 12 is all about childbirth, and it says if a woman gives birth to a baby boy, she's unclean for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, the boy is circumcised. The 8th day meaning a sign of new creation, the first day of the new week. And then 33 more days, so a total of 40, would be a purification period for the mom to not come into the sanctuary, to not touch anything holy. And then after that time is over, after the mother has healed, then she can bring an offering to the priest and be purified. And you go, wait. Offering, be purified, is it sinful to have a child? Well, of course not, right? No way. This is a wonderful, joyful, celebratory fulfilling of what God had created in new life and what he commanded in the garden, be fruitful and multiply. There's nothing about this that is bad or sinful. The offering is rather first because blood has been shed. That's what verse 7 says. Clean from the flow of her blood. So as she loses blood, as any human loses blood, it represents a loss of life. And it's symbolizing in the Old Testament, you are less than whole, right? There's a contact with death, a contact with sin's curse. There's nothing moral about this. It's ceremonially unclean. And so the first offering would be to purify and restore this wholeness so she could resume her corporate worship. Now that there was second, you go, oh, there was a sin offering, I saw it. Yes, there was. And listen, it's not for any specific sin. What's going on here is a recognition that during these 40 days, as she was absent from worship, she would have inevitably have sinned in some way. And so before she draws near to God again, those sins, whatever they were, needed to be dealt with and removed. It's exactly what Mary did, by the way, after giving birth to Jesus. And by the way, her offering is a bird, which just shows us the poverty of Jesus' parents. And so you go, well, I read in the case of a baby girl, the time period's doubled. It's 14 plus 66. What's up with that? Is that where we get into this chauvinistic society where women are lesser and there's clear sexism and prejudice? I knew we would find it. There it is. No. Okay, that's modern lens going on to this. That doesn't jive with Genesis 1 and 2. The rest of the Bible about the value and worth and dignity of women as co-equal image bearers, right? Doesn't jive with Leviticus, even the rest of the book, where actually women have way more rights than any of the surrounding cultures, and the things for sacrifices or the standards for them or the penalties for things are actually equal to men. Like, this is not about the worth of the child as a female. Okay, what is it? Some people say it's for medical reasons, about there needing to be a greater recovery period. But I think the best answer is that what we have here, the birth of a daughter, means there's another woman, another future child bearer involved. And sometimes this brings, with certain hormones being withdrawn, a release of uterine blood. And so now we've got two women involved with two potentially bleeding, one the mother and one the mother who's contacting her baby. And therefore, two periods of purification are needed instead of one. You go, whoa, that's too much information. Listen, the bigger picture of this all, I think you need to see this. I'm going to state the obvious here, right? A new mother is in a very vulnerable physical state. Right? Amen, ladies? Yes. And so in that, especially, by the way, in ancient times where it's very hazardous to give birth, right? Here comes this maternity leave, so to speak, for her to have time to recover fully before resuming active life and responsibilities. A period where she would be expected to be treated with tenderness and care, not harsh demands as if nothing happened, hey, back to work. This is not about oppressive power or demeaning rules. It's actually radical, countercultural care, where the community was called to step in and rally around and shelter this woman. And men specifically are required to step up to the plate with protective stewardship to the lives that they've been entrusted with, lives that were in a vulnerable state. I think we see the same heartbeat when we fast forward to chapter 15, where we have other laws about normal functions of the human body. Another super comfortable subject to talk about. Here we go. I don't know why the other elders didn't want to preach this passage, by the way. And I feel like this is like in a Leviticus 11 through 15 day, by the way, weather-wise. Like if it was sunny day, I'd be like, this just does not fit. Of course it would be freezing rain today. This fits, okay? So here we go. Chapter 15, we're talking about bodily discharges, okay? I'm going to keep it clean. Here we go. The first section is for men, and there's chronic conditions. Now, this could be medical terminology, anywhere from like gonorrhea to diarrhea, okay? But just chronic problems, okay? And they would be unclean, and there's a lot of protocols, don't touch, and what they touch is unclean. And then when it is gone, a 7-day period of cleansing, day 8, offering to the priest, and they're clean. Now, verse 16 through 18 are short-term normal things. So normal emissions, okay? Tracking. They would be unclean till evening. They would bathe and then be clean. Listen, not because sex is dirty or sinful. Not because guilt is associated with this. Maybe you grew up in a legalistic church background and that's all you heard. Like anything associated with that realm was bad, sinful, stay away, right? And I just got to tell people all the time in counseling, like you realize God created this, right? You realize this was his idea, his invention. He could have done procreation any number of ways. He decided to include pleasure and oneness. Like the explosion of it all was his idea. This is not like unclean, bad, sinful, dirty, okay? So if you grew up in that kind of culture, we need to redeem that a bit, okay? Unclean here is not moral. Again, it's ceremonial. Not because anything was done wrong, because there's a loss of bodily fluids that actually include actual life. Okay, so again, a symbol of a loss of life or being less than whole. So then it goes into women. They have short-term normal, like the menstrual period, 7-day period of being unclean. You go, again, harsh and restrictive. Is it? Or is it a welcome blessing? Right? Is it protective care? Like even placing limits. Did you notice this week in reading on what her husband can do during that time? Right? Like, give her some space, dude. Think about that. In a day and age where, harsh, oppressive treatment of women as if they were property was very common, in comes this kind of law and establishes a drastically distinct level of respect. The last of the chapter is chronic conditions. So, like the woman who comes to Jesus to be healed and touches her cloak who was bleeding. So, again, overall, sacred things, vulnerable things, ensuring they're not treated indifferently. Okay, that leads to our last category. Unless you're a dermatologist, this is a tough read, right? Like no one's geeking out about skin diseases, so let's just get through this, okay? But there are some important things we need to see. Out of the gate, we think of this chapter, and your version might say leprosy. The word in the Hebrew, it's not really a good parallel to a modern day medical version of leprosy. The word is better translated like a generic umbrella term for skin diseases, okay? It's wide range. And so if you had something going on with your skin, go to the priest, it's kind of the medical officer of health, and they would have these instructions here to determine what was clean and unclean. And you had clear cases where something's deeper than the skin, boom, disease, unclean. You had a borderline case, in which case you would quarantine for 7 days, see if it's spread, 7 more days. If it's spread, yeah, unclean. If not, then you're good. And there were chronic cases that it lists out in verse 9 through 17, and really the focus is on is the skin open or closed. That's the determining factor. And then it gets into complicated cases the rest of the chapter, things like scarring, burns, itchy skin under facial hair, which is a phrase I thought I'd never say from the pulpit. We're dealing with eczema, dermatitis, all those really fun things like that. Even baldness, verse 40. Thankfully, we're clean. We're good, bald guys. Now, the point is not to identify one-to-one medical modern-day diagnosis, okay? That's not the point. If you're a medical professional here, you're like, this chapter just burned me up, okay? That's not the point, okay? This is about what's ritually clean or unclean. Now, the end of the chapter is tough, okay? It deals with the effects of someone who has this skin disease, who's a leper, quote unquote. And what they would have to do is wear torn clothes, grow out their hair, cover their mouth, which are all signs of ritual mourning. And they would cry out, unclean, unclean, wherever they encountered people. Now, this was not to shame them. It was to prevent others from incidentally contacting them and spreading any disease. Nevertheless, it was still hard. And the worst part of it all, as long as they had the disease, they had to live outside the camp, outside the city, isolated from the community's everyday life. We saw a glimpse of this in the height of COVID, didn't we not? When people are cut off from their loved ones in the midst of their pain and suffering. It's horrible. You can imagine, you put yourself a little bit into the place of someone with this kind of hardship, how distressing it was, how difficult it was. We see an example of Moses' sister Miriam actually having to go through this for a time period. And you can imagine their loved ones are just so eager to get them restored back into the community as quickly as possible. But as long as they had the skin disease, until that illness passed, they were unclean. And I think in this we see a vivid, dramatic parable for sin, you guys. Like, this doesn't mean someone who has a sickness has sinned. I'm just saying that it's an analogy, that this is a picture of the darkness of sin, that like skin disease, it starts small, it's almost undetectable, and then it begins to spread and progress. And the gradual effects eventually affect the whole person and eventually shut us off from the presence of God and cut us off from fellowship with others, because what's unholy can't come in contact with what is holy, right? And there's 2 interjections in these chapters dealing with what even happens when it comes in contact, when there's mold and mildew and fungus and like clothing, right? Or like homes and walls. Some of you guys have dealt with this in your own lives. What do you do then? And you got to cut it out and you got to burn things. You got to tear it down, because it's not even just about sin affecting individuals. It's about sin has corrupted all of God's good creation. And we need to be just as stringent and severe and strong in fighting sin without indifference in all of God's creation. The rest of chapter 4 then gives kind of some hope. What happens when a leper is cleansed, when someone is healed, and how can they be readmitted to the community? And we see an elaborate 3-step restoration process. Step 1, where they're outside of the camp, this purification ceremony happens. And you got 2 birds with the priest. Did you see this? One of the birds is killed and the other is released and set free, giving again a vivid picture of what these were the 2 paths of your life. And apart from God intervening and healing you, you would have been like this bird. But instead, you've got a new path forward with hope. You've been set free, right? And then for 7 days, he would remain outside the camp. He would wash, he would bathe, wash his clothing, bathe, and and shave everything, like even the eyebrows. Did you catch that? The point is transparency. You're not hiding anything anymore, right? And then he would be inspected day 8, brought back into the community. And then step 3 is you have some offerings made in the temple to restore. Much like childbirth. Okay, there's probably some sin that went on in whatever time he was separated from the community. And so this is restoring that fellowship with God. But also there was a grain offering made, which going back to week 1, and it was kind of like your service back to God, and it's kind of like the priest being readmitted, consecrated. So imagine a wounded soldier coming back onto the front lines, rejoining his troop. That's kind of what that would look like. And in the end, we have a picture of healing from disease being a picture of salvation from sin. Okay, wow. That's a lot, man. Like, feeling some whiplash. Can you help summarize? Yes, I can, actually. Here we go. What is the purpose of the purity laws? Well, to make God's people distinct, holy, to reflect the holy God who saved him. In fact, the end of the whole passage, Leviticus 15:31, thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness. Unholiness leads to death. God wants to separate and help us be untouched, unscathed by a sinful world. And so that's the overarching purpose of these purity laws. God's people can't blend in with the world, right? Romans 12, don't be conformed to the ways of the world. Be recognizably different. Okay, number 2, what are the parameters of the purity laws? What we've seen today is that this affects and touches ordinary everyday life. Like, there's no divide between secular and sacred. Oh, this belongs to God. This is my normal, ordinary life. No, it doesn't work like that. All of life is worship. All of life is spiritual. All of life is to be under the umbrella of holiness, set apart to God. Every crevice. Amen. Drinking, eating, our bodies, sickness, disease, our physical health, it all. Number 3, the problems, though, of the purity laws, because we fast forward to Jesus' time, and these laws, which were meant to help unclean people be cleansed and come back to God, were actually what? They'd been turned into building walls to keep people away from God. The Pharisees and the priests turned into the purity police, right? And they're beating people up with the law. Matthew 23, Jesus says, you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. So religious leaders were missing the heart completely. But not only that problem, there's another problem. I can't obey. I'm not pure. Even as the prophet Isaiah, when encountering the holiness of God, falls on his face, he goes, woe to me, I'm unclean, right? We are unclean. And if we're unclean, we can't be in the presence of God. And so while the purity code holds a mirror to God's holiness and a mirror to our unholiness, it doesn't bridge the gap. Right? It doesn't provide the remedy. We're still unclean. We're still outside the camp. We're still cut off. We needed more than a code. We needed a cure. Matthew 8:2, and behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. Let's watch this for a moment. We needed a cure, and he was our cure. The divine coming down with healing hands and the holy touching what was unholy. It didn't bring death, but the reverse, and it didn't make him unclean, but the reverse. Everything that touched him was made clean. Even though the Pharisees thought Jesus was lax on these purity laws we've seen today, Jesus didn't lower the standard. No, he maintained that you must be holy, you must be clean to approach a holy God. He simply did it for us. Jesus came not to dilute or abolish these laws, but to fulfill them. And in fulfilling them, he rendered them void. Mark 7, whatever goes into a person from outside doesn't defile him, but what comes out from a person's heart does. And thus he declared all foods clean. Which took a little bit of time for those new early Christians to get in to their system, right? Because they've been ingrained in these purity laws. And so God emphatically has to tell this to Peter in Acts 10 and 11, and in Ephesians 2, and Colossians 2, and Galatians, and Hebrews 9 and 10, all announced, no. These points of distinction between Jew and Gentile no longer are relevant, for Christ has come. And the photographic negative of Leviticus 11 through 15 has been developed now in perfect clarity. It's Jesus. For salvation is available through him. No distinction between Jew and Gentile. Everyone has access to God through the blood of Jesus. Because he didn't just heal, and he didn't just teach, and he didn't just obey. He atoned. He removed the sickness of our sin by taking it upon himself at the cross. The clean for the unclean, the righteous for the unrighteous. By his wounds we are healed. And so the message to the unclean is not keep out, stay away. It's draw near. Come and be clean at the feet of Jesus. Have you had that moment where you've gone to Jesus and you've knelt before him and you've recognized the sickness of your sin, and in desperation and at the same time in faith in him, you've called out to him, if you're willing, Jesus, you can make me clean. That happened for you. If it hasn't, don't wait another day. Today is the day of salvation. Okay, well, I have had that moment. I'm a Christian. What do I do with today? You said these laws no longer apply. I mean, I'm all for singing and worshiping Jesus, that they no longer apply. But is there anything else to this? And I would say yes. There's a key principle that still comes out of this that is not done away with in the New Testament, that God's people are still to be distinct. Look at 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be unequally yoked or identified or attached with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? What fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Satan? What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we're the temple of the living God. And as God said, and he begins to quote the Old Testament, and guess where he goes first? Leviticus. I will make my dwelling among them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, verse 17, go out from their midst and be what? Separate. Be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing. Chapter 7, verse 1. So since we have these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement of body and spirit, bringing holiness to completion in the fear of God. Body and soul, separate from sin. Be distinct from the world. You've been saved, so live like it. And don't even touch what's unclean. Listen, if someone can't tell by the way you live that you follow Jesus, something's wrong. If areas of your life look indistinguishable from people who don't know and love Jesus, something's wrong, right? Including the spotlighted area of today, the more ritual or cultural areas of your life. And you go, well, that's not what's most important. I agree, which is why we spent time in Amos getting to the heart and roots of sin, which is why the opening of Leviticus deals with our worship of God. It's why we're going to go next to ethical laws and loving our neighbor and all the things that are more important than the things today. But the things today aren't excluded under the umbrella of holiness either. It's not just the deeper things, it's everything. It's our daily routines and rituals and ordinary actions and customs and choices. None of these are untouched by the power of the gospel. Listen, that's not legalism, it's surrender. It's letting his holiness not just capture the big areas of life, but seep down into the corners of life and cover it all, so that when we come in contact with anything that remotely reeks of sin or death or the curse of this world, anything God would call unclean, that we immediately are sensitized and alert and go, hey, what am I doing here? Why am I associated with this? Why am I endorsing this or allowing this? Listen, we have to be nonconformists as Christians. Like Daniel living in Babylon. Not only did he not bow down to their statues, but he also didn't eat like they ate, right? So sometimes it's the simple, ordinary rhythms of life. And that can shape us. That can either promote our surrender to the Lord and our distinction and our holiness, or the opposite. It can promote a laxness, a complacency, a compromise, a lack of love for God. Let me say it this way. Things that are not outrightly, morally sinful can still be unholy, or still be unwise, or still have distancing effects from the God who saved us. They still need to be rejected rather than received. So holiness today, we need to see, as we begin to wrap up, isn't just meant for the prayer closet, right? He wants every room in your house, the kitchen, the maternity room, the bedroom. All of life is worship. And so I want to apply this to a couple specific areas today. So we talk about don't be conformed, Romans 12:1. Don't be conformed to the ways of this world, but be transformed. Well, let's get into this. Like, we're rarely going to preach on this, right? So it's hitting it today. I'm going to hit it. What about the area of food? What's your relationship with food look like? Like, let me just ask a couple simple questions. What are you eating, okay? We don't have red X's anymore, but the truth still apply. Are you striving to steward your health with what you're putting into your body? Eating things that are clean. How much are you eating? Are you consistently pushing past limits without self-control? Are you consistently doing the opposite and trying to control your appearance? Why are you eating? And I had a hard day. It's comforting, right? It's an escape. I need to deal with this pain. Or is it to steward your body, to joyfully fellowship with others? And how are you eating? With discontentment, with grumbling, with anxiety, with anger? With happiness and gratitude to God and thanksgiving and worship for Him creating this, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, all to the glory of God. So we need to ask, is your eating distinct? Is the way you handle food differently from the world? As the band comes up, let's look at the second category, body, right? Like, how are you approaching your own health, your physical health, your fitness? How do you handle sickness and pain and disease? Is there any image obsession in your life? You doing anything to alter your cosmetic appearance? What about basic cleanliness in your life? Like, do you care about that? How about modesty? We don't talk about that often, but we need to say a word about sharing or revealing that which is sacred, right? Do you dress differently than the world, right? Or maybe have you become desensitized to, well, this is what's normal, right? This is what's ordinary. This is what everyone else looks like and puts on. How about your physical rest and sleep and Sabbath? Like, these things matter. It's not the spiritual world over here and then this. Like, this is the realm of following Jesus. We could funnel this into the realm of entertainment and what things you're putting before your eyes and what you're allowing on your screens and scrolling and consuming in media, songs you're listening. We go on and on. In fact, one specific thing, I've never talked about this, but this week I couldn't help but be pricked about this specific subject. This is going to be unpopular, but I'm going to go there. Like, as I look at this passage with its focus on death versus life, holy versus unholy, distinct from the world, even in their rituals versus ours. Like, I want to ask, how do you handle Halloween? It's coming in a few days. Like, how do you handle that day? Or maybe it's like a month now in our culture, right? It keeps growing in its popularity. It keeps growing in its graphic nature. Like, this more and more and more overt blood and ghosts and graveyards and zombies and gore, like using horror for fun. Like, this is literally a celebration of death. How do you handle that? I don't hear Christians talking about it. I almost hear Christians afraid to talk about it. What are we doing? Are we conforming? Are we distinct? You go, well, listen, I don't know all the gory stuff. My kid literally dresses up like Winnie the Pooh. Now you're going to go off from the pulpit about Winnie the Pooh? No, I'm not, okay? Not everything is, I'm not saying it's blatantly morally sinful for you to dress up in a costume, okay? I'm saying, how do you handle this day? Like, you need to realize, like, I'm going to say this in love as a pastor over your soul, you need to realize this particular celebration has at its roots, it is yoked with witchcraft. Do you realize that? There are so many demonic attachments. And I look across my neighborhood, and I look across, are we different, man? Are we distinct? Halloween's not a big thing, but it's still under the umbrella of holiness. That's the point of today. Whether it's Halloween or some other ritual or other part of your life, if you looked at that, is it clean or unclean? Is it light or darkness? Is it pure or impure? Let's apply that across the board. And I want to end asking ourselves the question we've been wanting to ask every week in Leviticus. Lord, where are there areas of my life that are not yet holy? And not yet wholly yours? Where is he pricking you today? Where is he highlighting things today? Where's the Spirit going, that, I want that. This, I want this. I'm going to end just telling a story. A decade ago, some good friends of ours in Texas went through a real struggle with a birth. They had twins, and the mother went into labor at 17 weeks. And the doctors did all they could to kind of stop and pause the pregnancy and hold. And so for 4 weeks, she lay in the hospital. We were up there daily praying, people from our church singing. And at week 21, couldn't stop it anymore. And one of the babies didn't make it. One of the babies, sweet little Asher, did. 1 pound, 7 ounces. You can imagine days and days, weeks and weeks in the NICU. Nothing about this journey would be regular for them. And finally, he got to go home after months and months. And I remember talking with his mom and dad about him being about 9 months old. And we were talking about what the Lord was teaching them. And she said, one thing above all else the Lord is doing in me, he's ripping out of me a desire to be normal. I keep just wanting to be normal. I just want a normal baby and a normal kid with a normal life, be a normal mom, do things that normal moms do. And the Lord keeps telling me, that's not going to happen. It's not normal, and you need to accept it. Are you trying to be normal? Are you craving just being normal? Do you realize, as a person purchased with the blood of Jesus, you are distinct. You're different. Oh, church, let's not conform to the ways of the world. Let's walk out that transformed new life in distinct ways. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you that you have come. You brought the cure when we had no cure. Each one of us is that leper in Matthew 8, crying out to be clean, and you have made us clean. Thank you, Jesus. And so what fellowship has light with darkness? What contact should what's clean have with what's unclean? God, help us now, I pray, to pursue holiness even in the little minor, menial, ritualistic, cultural things in our life, like eating and drinking in our body and holidays and normal everyday routines. God, highlight for us where we are allowing what is unholy and unwise and being shaped by it. Make us a distinct people for your glory, Jesus. They would look at us as a city on a hill, as light in the midst of darkness, and go, surely these people have been with Jesus. Would you do that work in our hearts now as we sing to you for your glory? Amen.